Hello and welcome to Top Story. What's the reason behind the success of English football clubs? Don't worry, we're not going to spend the next 8 minutes reliving the Champions League semi-final, a semi-final that saw, of course, the victory of Manchester United over Barcelona, but rather we've decided to take a look at the business model of English football clubs. A model that has proved a magnet for foreign talent and capital, a model that is now paying off. The Champions League this year will be all English, with Manchester United playing either Chelsea or Liverpool in Moscow on the 21st of May. So, to discuss the success of English football clubs, I'm now joined by Andres Evagora, Deputy Head of News at Eurosport. Mr. Evagora, thank you for joining us this morning. My first question, is it all about big money?
Well, money has a huge element to play in all this because top footballers follow the money. They always have and they always will. And if you look at the money in English football, the revenues last year, something like £1.4 billion. That's about 400 million more than any other league in Europe. You're talking about the revenues of the first division. So it's no surprise to see 3 English clubs in the last 4 of the European Cup for the second year in a row, remember. And we'll have an all-English final after Manchester United's win last night.
So why have so many foreign billionaires decided to invest so much money in English clubs, you think?
Well, there's a range of reasons. At one end, it's purely for the pleasure. Roman Abramovich has sunk in something like £600 million into Chelsea. Now, that's not to make money. He's doing it because he wants his team to be the best in Europe, and they could well be crowned European champions this year. At the other end, there are businessmen like the Glazers who have put money into Manchester United, who hope to actually get a return from their income. Investment rather. So there are a number of reasons that international investors have put money into England. Remember, about half of the top tier now is owned by international investors, which is unprecedented around Europe.
And you really get a feeling that these clubs are now run like big international companies that have gone global. Is this, you think, part of the success of English football clubs?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the money coming in is extraordinary. If you look at, we talked about Abramovich, but one shouldn't necessarily confuse big money with sound finance. Chelsea lost something like £75 million last year, losing that in 1 year. Now, that's a fantastic figure.
Manchester United also has
Manchester United lost
massive debts.
They've got debts, although on a year-to-year basis they're making money. So one shouldn't think that these are hugely profitable organisations. But in terms of the money coming in, it is actually incredible compared to the situation, say, 10, 15 years ago when English football was in a very bad state financially.
And when you look at English football and you compare it with continental football, you realise that one of the driving forces really in England is the Premiership.
Oh, absolutely. And one has to talk about TV money, of course. There's a £1.8 billion TV deal at the moment, spread over 3 years. Something not talked about very often is the overseas television rights. For instance, Hong Kong alone pays £100 million to the English clubs to transmit matches just in Hong Kong. So around the world, international money is coming in. Most of it is going on, a lot of it is going on wages, one must say. Chelsea, we talked about Chelsea again, something like 2/3 of their income is going straight out on wages, which is something that is worrying a lot of investors. But in terms of the global package of money that's coming in, it's extraordinary at the moment.
Are wages still rising, or has it started to stabilise, like some have suggested?
They're still rising, perhaps less than a few years ago, but they're still going up 5 to 10% a year. And this is partly due to TV money coming in and money coming in from international investors. And if you're a footballer, there's no better place to be than England, because frankly there are some second-rate players in England who are earning huge amounts that they could never earn anywhere else in Europe.
And what's interesting is that when you look at the clubs, they're doing very well, but the English national team hasn't even qualified for the Euro 2008.
No, and that's because of this international nature of the game. You can watch a game between Liverpool, Manchester United, Chelsea, Arsenal, and barely see an English player. And that's partly to do with the openness of the economy, if you like. The football economy, they will accept money from anywhere and they'll take players from anywhere. So which often means there's very few English players actually playing at the top level.
Now let's step back a bit and compare English football with French football. The French clubs aren't doing very well at the moment. What's the prime reason, you think?
Well, you're right. France has had a terrible couple of years. Lyon got to the last 16 this year. That was the best they could do. Just one team in the last 16. England has 3 in the last 4. Unfortunately, the French league is something of a cottage industry compared to the English Premier League, which is one of the most successful franchises in the world. TV money, merchandising, and also one mustn't forget there's fewer people turning up into the stadium. It's less of a spectator sport in France as it is in England. So there are a number of reasons, and one has to say the gulf between English and French football from a financial sense, and unfortunately on the pitch, it's never been wider.
So money again, and you get the impression that France is very good at raising young talents, but once they get name recognition, they leave for England or other countries.
Yes, it's even before that. Once a player is 17, 18 years old, he'll be offered triple, quadruple his salary to move to England, and very few people can refuse that. But this hasn't always been set in stone. 15, 20 years ago, some of the best English players were playing in France, the likes of Waddle, Hoddle, Stephen, because the money was here. Now the money is in England, and the trend is the other way. Most of the top French players play either in England or in France and Spain, and very few are left in France.
Well, how about the Spanish business model? Madrid is still the richest club in Europe, if I'm not mistaken. In Barcelona, shareholders are mainly supporters. Is that working?
Well, it's working in the sense that Real Madrid is the richest club in the world in terms of revenues. The vital difference between Spain and England is that in Spain, clubs sell their rights individually. Right. So at the very top level, Real Madrid can sell their rights for huge amounts, actually more than Manchester United. In England, the rights are sold collectively. So Real Madrid and Barcelona are still huge names and can attract top players. But I noticed from the Deloitte research, they're predicting that 10 of the top 20 teams next year will be English. So it's not just at the very top level. If you look at the top 20, sure, English teams are continuing to dominate, although there will be a sprinkling of Spanish and Italian teams.
Now, Arsene Wenger, the manager of Arsenal, who himself is a Frenchman, has suggested that big money could deprive English football of its soul. Do you see a risk there?
Well, there is a worry when you think of, just at the basic level, how much it costs to buy a ticket. You're talking about £50, that's something like €70. That's a lot of money if you're taking children or a family, a couple of people. And there is this idea that money is so important now that it's almost stopped becoming a sport. It's a business first and a sport second. But while the money continues to come in, the TV revenues are enormous, the merchandising, and we've seen investors from all over the world come in. It's not just Roman Abramovich. We've seen exactly the
Prime Minister.
The deposed Thai Prime Minister. We've even seen a Frenchman, Mr. Gaydamac, who is a Frenchman who's put enormous amounts of money into Portsmouth, who are now a top 10 team. He's a Frenchman, and he's putting his money into England.
Very
rather than
shortly,
France.
We've got 10 seconds left. Who is going to win the championship, you think?
The Champions League, I think this year is Chelsea's year, but Manchester United for the English Premiership is my tip.
Thank you very much for your analysis, Mr. Vagor. Thank you to you for having watched us. Please stay tuned on France 24. Have a good day. Bye-bye.